Lovable gets a prototype live in a single weekend with zero code, while Claude Code takes 2 to 7 days, but ships something that can actually survive real users. That gap decides whether your next build is a demo or a product. These tools are everywhere right now, so I'm running Lovable versus Claude Code across 5 head-to-head tests to see who actually wins and when. The pricing test is still ahead, and it decides whether the cheaper entry point actually stays cheap once your app gets complex. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. Every number here is traced back to official pricing pages, vendor docs, and community engineering reports. If you're choosing between these two for your next build, the wrong pick costs you weeks of refactoring or a prototype nobody can maintain. Alright, so test 1, speed to prototype and MVP. The day your tool takes 2 weeks to get something in front of a user, you've already lost the feedback loop that tells you whether the idea is worth building at all. Non-technical founders feel this one hard because every extra day without a live prototype is a day you're guessing instead of learning. I looked at community reports and the ThoughtBot baseline for both tools. Lovable gets a prototype live in a weekend with zero code, scoring a 9 out of 10. Claude Code lands an 8.5 for MVP delivery, doing it in 2 to 7 days, but you need basic coding knowledge to get there. Take these as community-reported timelines, not controlled lab tests. Lovable takes test 1. Claude Code does score higher on actual MVP delivery time, but Lovable's zero code weekend prototype is just a different category of fast for non-technical builders. That puts Lovable up 1 to 0 on the scoreboard. Now, test 2, production readiness and maintenance. A solo founder ships a Lovable app, gets real users, and then finds out the database has no row-level security, and input validation is missing. Now you're paying a dev to fix what the tool should have handled, and that cleanup bill can easily run into thousands of dollars. What surprised me here is how concrete the gap is. Lovable apps often ship without row-level security and input validation, scoring a 4 out of 10 on security hardening. Claude Code scores 7.5 on the same task because it operates with full codebase awareness, though it still needs a human QA pass. Pattern consistency tells the same story, 5 for Lovable, 9 for Claude Code. Claude Code wins test 2, and it's not subtle. Lovable's prototype speed is real, but the code it writes follows its own defaults and breaks down as the app scales. Claude Code matches your existing project patterns, and any dev on your team can maintain it. That ties the scoreboard at 1 apiece. Okay, so test 3, backend flexibility and custom logic. The number that matters here is this: Lovable locks you into Supabase as your only backend option. The moment you need a custom join, a third-party integration, or a multi-file refactor, you're doing manual fixes on code the AI generated in its own style, which is a really rough place to be. Lovable holds its own on basic roots, but the moment complexity enters the picture, the scores separate fast. Lovable scores 4.5 on custom backend logic and a 4 on architecture control. Claude Code scores 8.5 and 9 respectively, working on any repo and refactoring across files. These scores come from community engineering reports, so treat them as directional. Claude Code takes test 3, and the gap here is the biggest we've seen so far. Lovable's Supabase integration is genuinely powerful for simple apps, but custom logic is its real ceiling. Claude Code works on any codebase, follows your project's own conventions, and handles multi-file refactors cleanly. Claude Code now leads 2 to 1. So Claude Code is ahead right now, but pricing and learning curve are still on the table. And those two tests are exactly where a non-technical founder could flip this whole comparison. If entry cost and ease of use swing hard enough, the final tally looks completely different from where we are right now. Test 4, pricing and plan value. $21 a month versus $29 a month sounds like a small gap, but if you're a non-technical founder running multiple prototypes, that credit system Lovable uses can quietly stack up costs that don't show up in the headline price. I wanted to see how honest both tools are about what you actually pay. I pulled both official pricing pages. Lovable Pro runs $21 a month on annual billing and scores an 8 on entry cost. Claude Code Pro is $29 a month and scores 6.5 on the same dimension. On cost predictability, Lovable drops to a 5 because the credit system adds cloud top-up costs that aren't obvious upfront, and Claude Code's API can hit $150 a month with heavy use. This one is closer than the headline numbers make it look. Lovable's entry price wins on paper, but the credit system means your real monthly cost scales with how complex your app gets. Claude Code's subscription is simpler, but heavy API use pushes it to $50 or even $150 a month. So the winner here really depends on how much you build. Lovable wins test 4 on entry cost at $21 a month versus $29. The credit system does hurt Lovable's predictability score once hidden costs factor in, but the raw entry price still gives it the edge for founders just getting started. That ties the overall score at 2 apiece. Test 5, Learning Curve and Discoverability. Most Claude Code users only use about 15% of what it can do, which means they're paying for plan mode, subagents, and hooks they've never touched. That's not a small thing when you're a non-technical founder trying to ship fast, and the tool lives in a terminal you've never opened before. I looked at both tools from a zero experience starting point. Lovable scores a 9 on entry barrier. Browser-based, visual, no code needed at all. Claude Code scores a 4 on the same dimension because it runs in a terminal and needs basic coding knowledge to do anything useful. On feature discoverability, Lovable gets a 7 and Claude Code a 5, which lines up with that 15% usage stat. Lovable takes test 5. It's designed from the ground up for people who've never written a line of code, and that 9 to 4 gap on entry barrier is the biggest single dimension spread in this whole comparison. Claude Code rewards technical users, but asks a lot upfront, and Lovable wins the learning curve test, going away. That puts the final tally at 3 to 2, Lovable. Lovable wins on 3 things. Prototype speed, live in a weekend with 0 code. Entry price, $21 a month annual versus $29. And learning curve, browser-based and visual, so a non-technical founder can describe an idea and see it running the same day with no terminal, no setup, no prerequisite knowledge. Claude Code wins where it counts for production. It writes code that matches your existing project patterns, so any dev on your team can read and maintain it. It works on any repo, not just Supabase, and it handles multi-file refactors and complex backend integrations. If you're building something you'll maintain for years, Claude Code is the clear pick. Okay, so the rule is pretty simple. If you need to validate an idea this weekend, go Lovable. 1 weekend, 0 code, $21 a month to get started. If you're building something real users will depend on for more than a few weeks, go Claude Code. It really comes down to what stage you're at, not which tool is objectively better. If you're leaning toward Claude Code but want to know how it stacks up against a free alternative, I ran a full head-to-head in my Claude Code versus GitHub Copilot video, covering both on real tasks. Worth watching before you commit to a paid plan.